Welcome to the Faith and Fear podcast. Our goal is to help illuminate some of the more obscure aspects of the esoteric, to shed light on places that for centuries have been purposely kept in the dark. Join us as we discuss our experiences in this arena and work through the greater mysteries of life together.
Greg, Ryan,
Hello,
Michael.
we're back.
we are back. We are
It's
alive.
been 7 years.
Wow, I'm so grateful. It was a close one. Goodness gracious. But we are back at the Watchman's table. Thank you guys for going through all the things you're going through. Holy goodness.
Seems like a long time since we've talked.
It does.
Yeah.
This is something of a part two. We are hoping to continue the conversation that we last had about the quote-unquote paranormal. And in that conversation, there were some pearls that came up in our after party that I thought were worth sharing here. Ryan, would you help us better appreciate the paranormal realm on the international stage?
Yeah, I think what you're referring to, we mentioned that the United States used to have a degree path for parapsychology in the university program up until through the 80s, like early 80s, I think, was when they started stopping those, or they started shutting those programs down. But on the international stage, most other countries, or many other countries, have parapsychology as an option for a degree path. That's kind of what we had talked about?
Right.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting to me that it was illegitimized here in the States.
Yeah. Especially since the government still, has their hands in all that MK Ultra type stuff. If you want to go down that rabbit hole, but like they're still very much into it. The government anyway. So yeah, it's interesting to see that, but and kind of a bummer.
Yeah, there are so many beautiful YouTubes and internet resources that cover CIA operations, and it is a vast network of rabbit holes.
Oh yeah, it's wild.
Greg, you'd also mentioned how there in the 80s was around the same time that Ghostbusters became popular. Right. It's got to be a COINTELOPRO. Oh man, they're projecting it out.
Ghostbusters came out in '84. Their program was getting shut down in their university at the beginning of the movie.
Oh,
so their parapsychology department got shut down. That's why they started the Ghostbuster business, because they got fired.
Whoa!
Oh my goodness. Yeah, as soon as I made that association, I realized, those might be correlated.
Yeah, they did that on purpose.
Yeah,
Dan Aykroyd's a big like paranormal nut, so I'm sure he knew all about that when he was writing it.
Mm-hmm.
What do you know about Dan Aykroyd, Ryan?
Oh, he's just a huge, like, he's got a huge passion for the paranormal. Like, he's bordering on the kooky, like, very, very extreme. And he's very outspoken about it. So yeah, he's a big reason that the Ghostbusters movies exist, because he's so passionate about them.
Interesting. Yeah. I just heard him advertised in some NPR spot in one of their interview game show programs, and the soundbite was him. It sounded like he was half joking or very full joking about how he was so much looking forward to the afterlife and how he's going to rematerialize in Rome or something. Just and everyone's laughing about it. So I'm very curious about this. Yeah. Anyway, data points. So yes, thank you, Ryan. There is something fishy there. And thank you for being brave enough to not hide when it seems like that would be the cultural suggestion, is to just sweep everything else under the rug. This is not real. This is silly,
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that is a good point, and that's generally not easy to do for anybody. Just to stick to their passion, believe in it, even when others aren't seeing it right.
Ooh, that's like one of the premier challenges of a lifetime, it seems.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, deep bows there. And Greg,
yes, sir.
You had mentioned alchemy. Can you rematerialize the connection you were making there between the paranormal and alchemy?
Yeah, I'll do my best anyway. We were talking about what parapsychology is looking for in this case, and it seems to me like a journey to understand energies in general as they flow, move, and change in creation. And even though they're targeting paranormal events like, ghosts, apparitions, poltergeists, those kinds of things, to me, it kind of just symbolizes the pursuit of understanding how energy materializes itself, how everything comes to be, stabilizes as it is to the point that we can distinguish it from other things. So on that note, when we're talking about exploring energies, you could compare that to the pursuit of alchemy, because despite the common allegory of turning lead into gold, it's really about trying to turn your own lead into gold. So a base level of yourself, a corrupted level of yourself, up to a purified form. And that involves both balancing your mind and your body. To do that, you have to have an intimate and passionate understanding of how energy works, especially in your own body, and the effects that your mind has on the world around us. So on that level, yeah, it's a form of alchemy, I guess, to try to understand how these energies are operating, what they mean, how we can distinguish these things from one another, and organize ourselves accordingly.
Very good. Well bridged, sir. Organize our own energies, mind and body.
Well, I guess another note comparing it to paranormal phenomena is just the fact that there are paranormal phenomena that happen where they're like a recording of somebody who once lived. And the fact that that's a documented thing that goes on is evidence in itself that we, in our lives, in our presence, affect the world around us so profoundly that it could leave a memory like that could perpetuate over who knows how long, 100 years, 1,000 years. And yeah, to me, it's just it seems like a testament to how much of an actual energetic effect we have in the world, and how our decisions, how our emotions, our thoughts, all of this is being interacted with by the world, recorded by the world, and things are being changed by it. So, yeah, on that level, it's an important thing to know. And parapsychology as a field and endeavor is trying to understand something that I think in general we should understand so much more than we do. And fields like parapsychology are making much more progress in that learning process than all the mainstream that is trying to kick them down.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're finding some real stuff and just need to be taken a little more seriously to be getting what they're really finding throughout this endeavor out to the people in the translated format that makes sense. It's something we can all relate to. So, yeah, I guess that's it.
Thank you. Your description of this process of how our energy can leave such an imprint to be so recorded. It's so empowering and intimidating at the same time. This is what shakes me to the core. Thank you for giving words to it.
It's the great work.
Oy. Great and immense indeed. So now that you've touched on these different energies, seems to be the perfect segue to introduce an audience question from
audience question.
Our first audience question. Thank you very much,
special.
dear audience member, from a Dirty Bastards.
Virtual bastards.
Virtual bastards.
He might be dirty too. We're not sure. We're not sure. We haven't verified the
Virtually
cleanliness
dirty.
of the virtual bastards.
Please clarify if you can, sir/sirs. The question is, Ryan, if you can reiterate the question and start us off with an approach to it.
Oh, shoot. Let me pull it up. It says, how do you guys feel about psychic abilities?
Mm-hmm.
Good question.
So, yeah. I'm pretty pro psychic abilities. I'm pretty pro. I guess you could say I'm pretty pro.
Mm-hmm.
Pro psychic.
Some leaning on that side of the spectrum.
No, I don't know. If the question is, do I believe in psychic abilities? The answer is yes, very much. I guess I'm not 100% sure on how deep the question, do we like psychic abilities? Do we believe in them? But yes, I believe in them. I think they're very real. Do I think every tarot card shop with a 800 psychic number is legitimate? No. I think most of them are probably not legitimate, but I do think that legitimate psychic phenomena exists and that I've seen some in my lifetime, and I think it's pretty fascinating.
Noting the general vagary of the question and also the vagueness of the subject matter we're looking at here, just because a lot of people have different stories about it. Ryan, if you would be able to define, to the best of your abilities, how you understand psychic ability.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good question. So I guess there's lots of different forms of psychic phenomena. There is telepathy, which is knowing something or reading someone else's mind. There's telekinesis, which is moving something with your mind. There's kind of remote viewing, which would be to focus in on a person or a set of coordinates and somehow be able to view that location. The CIA has done a lot of study into this subject, so that's pretty interesting. They were trying to train spies, which is pretty cool. So yeah, there's lots of different types of psychic ability.
Mm-hmm.
I guess telepathy and telekinesis would be kind of the two main everyone kind of talks about that type of psychic ability.
Mm-hmm.
Umbrella terms, I guess.
Thank you, Ryan. Being an etymology nerd, I must offer the etymology of psychic for the sake of getting a general clarity here, if we can. I like how etymology interrupts, to some degree, the contemporary understanding of a word or a subject matter. And yet I think it also, at the same time, offers some very serious clues to the larger, deeper story of the subject. So as we may know, psychic, word from the 1800s, simply meaning pertaining to the human soul, from the Greek psyche or psychikos, something like this. The psyche, the soul, the mind, the life. And as our resident alchemist would remind us all, the mind is all. As a religious person may suggest, the soul or life is all that is.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, wow, to consider then that something that is the psychic ability then would be something like an ability that is coming from the soul, from mind, from life, from all that is.
Mm-hmm.
And why wouldn't there be an ability from that essence? Like the very fact that we are speaking, breathing, or even incarnate seems to be a psychic ability from that perspective.
Indeed.
And so I'm only wanting to raise my hand here with a curiosity that bridges the quote unquote normal or the mundane to the quote unquote paranormal and the extraordinary, and how there is something perhaps very important that connects them, yet to be fleshed out or spirited out.
Mm-hmm.
But I digress.
If I can give that a try.
Please.
So the association we're making with the energies that we have. But you were talking about bridging the gap. Like, what is the difference between normal and paranormal?
Mm-hmm.
And to me, what it feels like it is these are experiences of energy, of creation, of manifestation, of all these things that most people don't experience. This isn't part of common life for most people. And I think the common route that gets people going in the wrong direction is assuming that if you don't have personal experience of it, then you need to reject it. You need to keep it out of your way. Don't worry about that. Just focus on what you're doing. And that's kind of a discipline to a lot of people. So I guess what I'm trying to say is because we do that, we're leaving out a lot of detail of what this could be. And what I think it is, what I think paranormal investigation's after, and what alchemy's about, and a lot of this mysterious stuff is it's all natural energies. It's all creation at work. It's all just nature's garden. And the way we look at it is what makes it confusing. So when we're looking at these things, the gap between the two can be bridged that way. So instead of it being such a mysterious, like these are people or outward external entities that we need to resolve, instead of thinking of it that way, we can think of it as this is all incorporated into the energy network that runs everything. So as soon as we can do that, that gap will be bridged, I feel.
Interesting. This reminds me of the different stories I've told myself to explain what in the world is happening. In my 20s, the story was, I'm dreaming. This is a dream. Pretty sure I know how dreams work, and this is working like a dream. And
I'm still
and I found myself very convinced of this, and it was very consoling. And like that, it's just, and yet it had something missing. Like it also ran a consistent risk of this solipsistic selfishness where I am the main character and everything's revolving around me and my dream. And then there's the consideration that we are all dreaming and we are all dream characters in God's dream. That is one of the popular suggestions. But
a matrix theory.
You got it. And dude, I'm hearing these two in what Greg is saying. Please go on, Ryan.
the end of last year, I had a guy call me, like a client, um, who was absolutely convinced that he was the only real person in existence.
Solipsism, textbook.
And
Hmm.
what?
They would call that solipsism in a textbook.
Yeah.
Unfortunate.
Well, he believed that everyone else was part of this computer system that he's trapped in, and that he can learn how to get out, but he has to be able to figure it out. And everyone around him is trying to keep him from figuring it out. It was a very interesting, very long conversation.
I thought the most interesting thing about hearing about that conversation is he reached out to you and he trusted you with a lot of this. Like he's talking about everybody being against him.
Well, yeah,
But
and I kept
he
asking him,
talked to you
like,
for a
well, am I part of that system? Am I part of that control or whatever? And he says, yeah, probably. Oh,
Gotcha.
okay.
Right on. Well,
Oh, you figured me out.
But
what are you going to do about that?
Still, so what a compliment that he would still be sharing and being vulnerable with you of all of the different programs and agents of the Matrix.
Yeah,
You,
right.
You were the most trustworthy in his that he was aware of. This does graze pretty close to home for me. This is a bit of a rabbit trail, but there is something of a pattern. It seems as those who are called to be watchmen, or those who may even have any kind of spiritual sensitivity, let alone have any kind of potential as a prophet, someone who is listening to one of the many whispers of God, yeah, and to then misinterpret, run the many risks in misinterpretation and misappropriation, and to insert so much story and so many other whispers to add in to that true whisper from God about what in the world is happening. And in that unfortunate confusion, there is this Truman Show effect, this solipsism, where it is me versus the whole weird world that I'm in.
Yeah.
And there has got to be a kernel of wisdom in this for it to even be an idea. Like there's got to be a whisper of some truth. And yet there is such a strong story of fear here as well. Whew. So it's a big bookmark for me to follow through with.
Oh boy. Well, that's definitely a conundrum. The solipsism conundrum. I mean, I guess if we're talking about, a lot of religious traditions, this idea of enlightenment involves the idea that you are one with everything. You are one with God. So just with those details alone, any kind of experience where you're connecting to God really closely, like something that stands out to you, like you just feel like you understand everything now. Those kinds of feelings are a closer connection to God, but sometimes they have the effect of making you feel like you're the only one who is one with everything. It's all about you, and it can turn into that fast. And the trick to that, to get out of that, the transmutation, is to realize that everyone else feels this way too. We're all part of the same thing. It all makes sense that way too. We're all connected, and even though we all feel like, or can at least feel like we are God, we're all God too at the same time. So to say that you're the only one is to disregard all of the other manifestations of God but yourself. So on that level, it's a dangerous way to see things.
Whew. It's such a paradox around specialness. How can I be so special and yet everyone else is so special? That's not fair, is it? What is that?
Perfectly fair.
I'm the specialist.
But I want to be the most special.
I'm the most special.
Well, now we got to compete.
And this seems to be Western culture. And this seems to almost come
Human nature.
You're suggesting human nature, right?
Yeah. I mean, I know it definitely is Western culture, but I think it's before Western culture existed.
Definitely an aspect of human nature. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. I don't want to blame Western culture. Western culture just seems to be an expression of our human nature, perhaps split in a far extreme to either the left or the right. I'm not certain.
Yeah, no,
And
that's fair. Western culture being a kind of a demonstration, an extreme demonstration of human nature.
because there's been so much commentary about the individualistic framework and whole scheme of the American dream as an example, and all of that competition about proving one's merit, one's worth. And so is it really any surprise that when one comes to an enlightenment that, well, I am the enlightened one.
Yep.
And our boy Ellen Watts even had a sweet story comparing the Eastern versus Western experience of the Enlightenment. In the West, someone tastes some enlightenment, and they go manic. I'm Jesus. Oh shit, I'm Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And he's locked up. He's like, wow, this guy is terribly delusional or bastard. In the East, someone's like, realize, oh man, I'm Jesus. And the guru says, good job. Very good. Welcome to the club.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I actually think he was saying even just anybody in Eastern culture, if you approach them, that's what they'd say is, oh, at last you found out. Good for you.
West versus East, left versus right. That is another big bookmark. But to keep it to the primary thread that we're following here, as we're trying to make sense of all of the energies and the strange matrix that we seem to be in, there is a story that y'all have touched upon way back in episode 1. The story that you both began to write individually and then found that you were writing in tandem. A story that names keepers and shadows, these entities of faith and fear. And it seems like a good time as any to tell a ghost story or two about these shadows. But before we do, I'd like to better understand what you mean when you say shadow.
So would I.
Oh boy.
So it's a very interesting subject, shadow people. It's almost as widely documented as Bigfoot sightings. People seeing these shadow people. Generally they're 6-7 foot tall. Sometimes it's kind of vague, but you can kind of see like a trench coat or just like a long robe type of deal. Some people say that they see the guy in a not a top hat. What's the type of hat I'm thinking about, Greg?
It's not a top hat?
No, is it a top hat? Like an old fashioned, it might be a top hat. Anyway, like sometimes people see him in a hat. I say him, but I don't know. that's kind of what we're referring to when we say shadow or shadow person.
So this is a consistently, there appears to be a consistent experience of this phenomena where there is a very tall, hatted, shadowy
Sometimes
figure,
hatted.
sometimes hatted.
Sometimes hatted. Yeah, and it's very, very bizarre because it's kind of a peripheral vision thing for most people. Um, but it's almost always a pretty persistent, long-lasting thing. So, like for instance, Greg and I dealt with it for more than a decade.
For sure.
Well,
As far as the experience goes, I don't know if that's a question that's going to come up later, but
well, before you go into
the,
it,
sure.
may I just offer my reflexive attempt to console myself about this pattern from the idea of the dream of the psyche of the matrix that we're all in. It's simply our own shadow, and we're projecting it on the wall just as the light before us casts it behind us. We all cast shadows, so we all see shadows.
Mm-hmm.
You know, what else?
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess what I was going to say about the experience that might help it stand out a little bit. It's not just imagery. It's not just you see something at the corner of your eye. If it's a shadow circumstance, what you're going to feel is an enormous level of fear that's beyond like a panic attack. It's an incredible feeling of being crushed by uh, shame, hopelessness, weakness, insignificance, and it hits you
Without,
like a wave.
without sounding just absolutely ridiculous, um, I think uh, Rowling got it pretty close when she wrote The Dementors,
Oh,
when she described the feeling that happens when they're around. It was very similar to that.
Man, that's so crazy. Yeah, because when Harry Potter movies came out, that was exactly my impression of
I was
the.
like, oh, she's seen them too.
Mm-hmm. Now it's not just all in my head.
Right.
But yeah, that is the feeling. So it stands out in that way too. It's not just you see it at the corner of
Right.
your. It's also like a notable feeling of despair, like your life is about over, and there's nothing you can do about it, kind of thing.
so then it is a bit of a psychic experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say so.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, in my experience of these things, seeing them is rare, but feeling them is way more common. And like I said, that's a good way to distinguish them from other things. Because when I'm describing this wave that hits you, it's something way out of the normal. Most people don't have to go through that. Most people don't feel it. But if you happen to be sensitive to those kinds of subtle energies, it can hit you like a train. So that's the main thing. But the reason why shadow people are associated with that feeling is because the sightings happen at the same time. Does that answer your question?
It does.
Oh, good.
While
Okay.
we're bringing up Rowling, even as we started to name the shadows and the shadow people, I was thinking of he who shall not be named.
Yeah.
Is there any risk, dear Watchman, of just describing these things as something, as an invitation to experience them?
So,
Yes.
yes. I always, because I have people call, hey, I want to be an investigator. Can I join your team? Stuff like that. And I have I got a phone call this week, same topic. So I always caution people because this is a topic that the more you look into it, the more you will see.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it's I don't know why that is really. I don't know if that's just you becoming more focused on it, so you start to pick up on these things rather than just overlook them. But it's definitely something that I would caution people before they deep dive into these topics because it can definitely take your life in a direction that you might not be ready to experience.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like wise counsel. I've considering the Dementor figure, symbol or character. I've heard that kind of entity described in the hippie circles as something like a spiritual parasite, and that
Yep.
these sort of entities will attach themselves, if you will, to a person and just kind of feed off of them.
Psychic vampire.
Right. So, whether we're aware of them or not, there seems to be the potential that the vampirism or parasitism is occurring. In any case, now that we have broached it and said the names and we are bringing awareness to it, wouldn't hurt to offer some medicine or some faith or some good spiritual garlic here for the vampire or the parasite. How does one, dear Watchman,
Oh man.
respond? Where do we find our center and remember our faith?
Well,
Oh man, that's such a huge
that is kind of the trick.
that's such a huge question. Um
I guess it goes back to our conversation about faith and fear, though, how to bring faith in the face of fear. Because when I was describing how this feels when you encounter these things, it's crushing. It's amazing. Like I've dropped to my knees so many times. And the thing is, though, is this is a feeling that it's kind of trying to get something in your head, trying to make you feel a certain way. And if you can catch that, if you can realize that it's just trying to make you feel this way, what you really are is a projection of God that is actually manifest in creation. So you have so much more power than this thing does. And as soon as you realize that, you have an enormous amount of leverage against that crushing feeling. But realizing that in the moment is hard.
it's like
So,
it's like when you're trying to learn how to lucid dream. It's like when you're in a dream and you can finally realize that you're in a dream and kind of begin lucid dreaming. That's what it is. It's like when you realize that you actually have power over this thing, then it's, game on.
well, that might actually, I guess I do have a story that might be relevant to this. I told you guys both my light bulb story from when I was a kid. It's just interesting to me because I didn't remember it for most of my life, but my mom reminded me a few years ago, and it's kind of just been like, oh shit, this all goes back that far. But anyway, so in the story, I was about 4 years old and sitting in my bedroom, and it was a mess. I had my micro machines and Legos and Star Wars action figures all over the place. And my mom came in at some point. I was just sitting on the floor, it seemed like I was just focused on something. And she came in and said, clean your room. And my response was, the devil told me I didn't have to. So,
Kids say the darndest things.
Right. And it seems hard for me to believe that my mom didn't just lose her shit when I said that. But at the same time, it's kind of miraculous what she responded with. And she to this day says it was like a inspiration from God. But basically all she did was didn't give me a face or anything. She just walked around my room, grabbed all the light bulbs off of my lamps, or unplugged them all and took them out of my room and said, all right, well, if you're listening to the devil, he's all about the darkness and you don't need the light then, if that's the way you're going. So she took all my light bulbs and left. And I was just sitting in my room thinking, I mean, it's the middle of the day. I haven't paid the consequences yet, but I was just thinking about this. Like, the devil is all about darkness. And now all my light's taken away because I am listening to the devil. So, do I want my light? Of course I do. So this freaking devil guy, I don't know if I trust him. So I just apparently sorted this out when I was 4 years old and came out of my room and walked up to my mom and said, all right, I get it. I want to live in the light. And she gave me my light bulbs back. But I'm telling this story because I feel like the point of it is I realized then that even though it was apparently the devil himself I was talking to, all it took was a little change of mind on my part. If I wanted to still be who I am, if I want to live in the light, all I have to do is not give into that fear, not give into those threats or those cunning deals or whatever that can be cut to finding shortcuts in general in life. But yeah, it was just, I don't have to clean my room because devil says I don't have to. But yeah, you kind of have to clean your room because at some point it's just going to be a real big problem. So I tell that story just to say, like, the greatest power that we have is our selves, our true selves, our higher selves, the ones that are connected as the projections of God that we are. So realizing that has more power than any of these psychic things that can show up. But so you just go down that spiral, and it starts with those, oh, I did this, so I have to feel ashamed about that, or I did this, so I'm not worth anything, or this person thinks something about me, and you just start thinking about all that kind of stuff. That's the spiral I'm talking about. And all you have to do is realize you are a projection of God. Who you are right now in this moment is exactly who you're supposed to be. All the problems that you have are exactly the problems you're supposed to have. Now you just need to be who you are, look at what you got, and start taking steps forward. And that's how you overwhelm not just shadows, but apparently even the devil himself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no deal necessary there when connected to that power.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. When to be or not to be is a really stupid question. Just be.
Mm-hmm. I be.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that story, Greg.
But yeah,
Right.
this is I don't know, this is something that Greg and I dealt with for a lot of years, through our teen years, into our 20s, late 20s.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I could say for myself it carried on for a while after that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it's not like I still see stuff from time to time, but it's not like it used to be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we even kind of lost touch there for a while. And
Right.
there was a period in that time where it seemed like we were both going through our own separate things.
Yep.
But, yeah, I suppose, that really bonded the two of us. The fact that we're both kind of in this realm where I mean, it seems like we're just getting wrapped up in something, but it's definitely a real sensation we're having and want to understand it. And
Right.
even though most people don't want to talk about it, the two of us, we had that in common. So, yeah, that was a big bonding experience, is understanding why this is happening, why these things even an experience in reality.
Right. And through the years, I worked with one client that was experiencing similar stuff. And we had a mutual friend in California that had experienced the same type of stuff. But I don't know a lot of people who have.
Yeah, especially when we're talking about these shadows.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Maybe that isn't more evidence to show that there's a lot of levels to this stuff. And the paranormal phenomena we're familiar with is kind of just one level, and it does get deeper. But I suppose at the same time, the point is it's all connected. This is all part of life. This is all part of how flowers grow and everything. So instead of thinking of it as like this external dimension that's trying to get into ours and do something to it, it's all incorporated. And that's important to remember, because we are affecting the system too. So it's not just spiritual forces trying to change how we do things. We are a big part of how these things manifest and perpetuate themselves. We are, in fact, I guess, created by a lot of these fundamental laws that define these experiences and manifestations, phenomena, or whatever you want to call them. So it's all connected.
Amen. Ryan, is there a story you'd like to share to round out our time together?
Greg, do you want to talk about I guess we can cut some of this out if we want to, but do you want to talk about the one when we were in the graveyard? When we were working with shields?
Oh, okay. Well, I guess if we're answering our question of
Our
how do
psychic
we
ability question.
psychic abilities. So
Okay. We can cut back into this. I don't know. You'll edit post magic or not, and it will just all sound silly. But
I wouldn't mind giving
all those years ago, Greg and I had been trying to work on psychic abilities, to develop them. And part of this was basic energy manipulation. And part of that was energy shielding. So like imagining a bubble around you or around an item and kind of putting focus into that bubble as a form of a shield. And we worked on that on and off for probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
Before we experimented with it more. But why were we in the cemetery in the middle of the night? We were just there looking around.
Good question. Somebody mentioned a cemetery, and we're all like, we got to go there now.
We were at a bar in town, and we were like, let's go to this cemetery. It was very late, middle of the night. Let's go to this cemetery. So we're in the cemetery in the middle of the night.
And we got all of our equipment.
Yeah, we're kind of rural out here, so this isn't like a city cemetery. This is like on the side of a hill. It's like mostly unmarked. There's some grave. Like it's an old cemetery. We have all of our gear, our night vision cameras and stuff like that.
Right. So I don't know if we came from the bar, but that'd be funny if we had all our equipment if we did.
Well, it was in my truck. It was in my Explorer.
Well, that makes sense. That might have
Yeah,
happened.
we were at the Mirkwood. We weren't like
Okay.
drunk, but we were like, yeah, we were having dinner or
Just ready
whatever
to go.
at the Mirkwood. Yeah.
Mhm. Well, so this could be a potential segue into a lot of stuff. But as far as answering the question, how do we feel about psychic abilities? So you were talking about the two different kinds before, telekinesis and telepathy.
Hmm.
But I think what you and I did in our experimentation was delve a little bit deeper into more subtle potentialities behind those things, which is interestingly enough adjacent to Kung Fu and martial arts, which also
Hmm.
happens to be where I started when it came to this energy work idea. Like Ryan said, when we met, I was drawing Dragon Ball Z characters. So when I was a kid, I was trying to sit there and like center my energy. I'm going to freaking fly right now. So I was all coming from like the Kung Fu level. I mean, DBZ was the,
His power level's
Xi
pretty high.
Jinping. Well, sure. Over 9,000.
Over
But
9,000.
um, anyway, I came from the martial arts side. And this is something that's actually very common in like higher levels of martial arts where you start to do energy work. And
Hmm.
I don't mean like full on Qigong or anything, but just learning how to control the energy in your body, how to set your own center of gravity, how to initiate your entire body in a certain sequence because you're controlling your energy. So I was going through martial arts when I met Ryan. And that's kind of how we joined forces on all this, and where the ideas of expanding the concepts of telekinesis and telepathy started really transforming because we were coming from two different angles, but interested in exploring the same thing, if that makes any sense. And one of the applications that of this energy work is understanding that, like we were talking about before, your presence has an impact on your environment, and you are connected to all the energy in your environment, directly connected. There's no separation. So the idea is, if you're going to have this faith against fear, if you're going to rise up against it, that creates a certain, like a tone, maybe a frequency. And you can do that in your mind. You can do that in your body. You can affect energy in your body, and you can also affect how your body and your presence affects the world around you. So that turned into we could project shields around ourselves, which are basically membranes of faith, where all these forces that might bring you down or lessen your spirit can't enter. And before this starts sounding goofy, um, well, maybe this doesn't help, but it's kind of like that scene that I like so much in Lord of the Rings, where he's facing the Balrog. He's this on the bridge, Gandalf, and he's this little guy, but facing this giant demon. But what he says to the demon is, "I am a servant to the secret fire, wielder of the flames of Arnor," but that basically means heaven. So wielder of the flames of heaven, dark flames will not avail you. You shall not pass. And those kinds of stances, I guess, like a mental, psychological stance you can take against something. I am servant of the secret fire, wielder of the flames of heaven. Basically, screw you.
Yeah.
And you can have that attitude, And the energy that you're creating with that, you can learn how to extend it. And what we were experimenting with is extending that energy into a tool or a weapon. So technically, we were experimenting with creating a shielded sword that we could fight these shadows with, kind of thing. As far as the effectiveness of that, I don't know if there's any way to prove that could be even a thing.
So the night I'm referring to is when we tried the collapsing the shield. Do you remember what I'm talking about? Okay, so
Yeah, okay.
I'm trying to find. I'm looking through my. I have a paranormal journal. I think this was 2011. So this one time I'm referring to, we're at the cemetery, and I don't even know how many there were or why they were there. Do you have any idea?
Well, as far as the number, I mean, somewhere around a dozen, I guess I would say. I mean, it wasn't like hundreds, but maybe that's what I'm remembering. You feel like it was more?
It seemed like a lot. A dozen's probably pretty accurate. It seemed like a lot. It was definitely more than I had ever experienced in one location. But it was like we were just surrounded. And I don't know if we had been talking about the sword theory, like putting a shield around a bokken or a katana or something like that. But I don't know if we had talked about collapsing a shield or if that just happened kind of on the spot. Do you remember?
Actually, that might have come up right then. Yeah, because I remember we had other people with us and they were feeling it. They're like, what the hell's going on?
And we were like, we need to do something quick. We had basically Greg and I started with the shield, a bubble kind of in one location, and Greg started with the shield in the other, around the whole perimeter, and I made mine bigger and he made his smaller, and it just kind of collapsed that space in between. If that makes any sense. Probably doesn't. Probably sound like a loon, but it was definitely when we were able to work together and collapse that area, the feeling of dread was gone.
Yeah, and another notable thing about it is everybody else started feeling fine too.
Right, we had 3 or 4 other people with us.
This doesn't sound so loony if I was to consider other quote-unquote psychic tools or practices such as group prayer, where there is a collective focusing of will, emotion, energy, of mind, and it has a way of impacting, cutting through, influencing. Do you guys find that it was, would you relate it to a group prayer, for instance?
Prayer has a different effect. Prayer is more of a powerful radiation in that way. What we were doing is trying to concentrate energy into like membranes, basically. And they were thresholds that these things couldn't cross. And we never had the idea before, but we were thinking if we can create 2 walls and bring them together, we might be able to negate these things somehow, contain them. Yeah, or at least contain them somehow.
Right.
And what we ended up doing was kind of negating them. But we were doing something a little bit more focused. Prayer is a much more just generally powerful thing. It has a lot more potential. But I don't know. It's
well, to be the angel's advocate here, during that experience, did y'all? Yeah, you see, because it's not the devil's advocate, the angel's advocate.
Oh my goodness!
You see what I did there? Did you all not have?
I get it.
Thank you, Brian. When you were endeavoring to create this membrane of light, of spirit, did y'all not have a particular frame of mind? There's like a certain essence that you were calling forth?
Yeah, I guess that goes back to our kind of years of previous practice in this energy shielding type of work. So we didn't really touch on it, but yeah, it's definitely a focus or a mindset that goes into creating those.
And that mindset, not prayerful, not like affirming of the light.
The way that I picture my own manifestation of these things is with a sort of sense of prayer in mind. Because again, the power that we have against these forces is realizing that we are the projections of God. We are the ones that are manifest on this earth. And we are the ones who make the decisions on what happens here. Dang it, I lost my train of thought again. Am I confusing you again, Michael?
I'm not so much confused, but perhaps I am. I'm instead imagining the hackles of a Christian rising as one would hear you describe that you or me or we are the ones who are tasked to decide, whereas the Christian belief or principle or virtue or practice would be abiding God's will and not our own.
Sure, but I guess what I'm trying to say is we're all God. We're all connected, and that's what that's supposed to mean. What God is supposed to mean is we're all connected. We all are one as God. But what's also important is that as you could say the individual projections of God that we are all part of a bigger system here. That part's true, but we are also individuals, and we have a responsibility on that level too. And that's, I feel, what Jesus Christ represented, was that responsibility. Know thyself. Of these things I've done, you too can do greater things. He kept trying to empower the people around him to realize that they are projections of God and need to see themselves that way.
Oh, it's well quoted.
So, yeah, it's not like you're going against God's will. That's not the point. It's taking responsibility for your role in it, I guess is a better way to put it.
Very good.
Instead of saying that, God's will, nobody knows. And saying God's will is what I do with myself. That's my responsibility. That's how I make a difference. That's where rubber meets the road.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying. That helps. So when it comes to that traction and taking action with that big responsibility, here you are trying to approach this membrane crafting.
Membrane crafting.
It's an album name. I remember having long conversations with you about what happened to those shadows. Like, did we destroy them? Did they disappear? Are they somewhere else? Where did they go? Why did they all come out? Like, it was probably weeks of those conversations. Where did they disappear to?
Yeah, I guess in my case, I found they took on a different character, but
yeah, that was definitely unintended consequences of our actions.
Well, and I guess that goes back to what you were talking about there being a kind of responsibility into even venturing off into these things if you're not already sensitive to them.
Right.
But in our case, it was inevitable.
Apparently.
Mhm.
Well,
Just
thank you, Greg. Thank you, Ryan, for sharing these stories, these experiences, and your wisdom that you've gained through them.
yeah, as wild as they sound.
For sure.
I trust there is a gift in there for someone, not myself. In any case.
Not yourself.
Oh,
if not only myself. I should say.
oh, that hurts to hear.
No, I'm so
Yes.
tired.
Are you
Shadows
not
are here.
entertained?
No, they're turning us against each other. Don't do it. Don't fall.
Oh, right. Shields up.
Shields up.
Shields
Activate.
up.
Oh, deep breaths.
Mhm.
Shields up needs to be a t-shirt.
Shield up, yeah. Oh, damn it. Faith and Fear podcast.
We
Shields
are-
up.
Shields up.
We are in the process of that trademark to your
Yep.
audience, so please don't print that
Yeah,
before.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, I'm editing that out until later.
Yeah, for sure.
That's for the Patreon subscribers.
Yep.
Thank you, dear patrons.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Made a good choice.
right. It's very provocative stuff. A lot to integrate and reflect on. Yeah, thank you all for being such provocateuring mavericks.
Well, thanks for listening to our mass hysteria.
Mhm.
I love it when it's in mass. Yeah, we're
Yeah.
together.
Yeah.
Group
Soul of
hysteria.
hysteria.
Soul hysteria is boring.
Waste of time.
Is I'm very grateful to experience y'all's brotherhood better, better appreciate what y'all have been through, and the connection you have, and the good work that is ahead of us.
Yeah. I'm
Out
looking
there.
forward to next podcast. If you have any questions, throw it up on the YouTube. That's the best way to send us questions right now, I guess. If you're
Mhm.
listening through Spotify and want to send a question, head over to YouTube and do it there.
Yeah, you too can be on YouTube, please.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
we appreciate the inquiry and the participation.
Absolutely. That was a great question to start with, too. I mean, we could have got a lot of questions, but that was a good one to really make this podcast here interesting.
Yep.
Moving into farewell mode. Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you and goodbye.
Mhm.
and keep watching.
Oh, keep watching.